welcome to podcast number 27. The basic terms used all the time throughout actually refer to earlier podcasts, and in particular, the definitions of theme and story. So if you've not actually listened to those podcasts, it would be worth your while going back and listening to the basic 8 themes, including things like the fear of death and the pursuit of love, or dealing with the idea that story is about character motivation and not some great big plot device. And so therefore one is looking at only 10 stories in the whole history of narrative. And therefore, having taken a look back at those, or rather listened to them, you'll have a chance to understand how they're used when it comes to identifying and working the genre. In this one we're going to talk about communal dramas, the fourth in the group of personal dramas that we've been talking about so far. This genre group plays out somewhere in the space between those dramas that deal with family and work situations and the epic dramas where we're looking at society and changes of society over time. The communal dramas become a very personal favourite of many people. Ranges in things from as different as Gran Torino through Toy Story 3 to Erin Brockovich. And it includes comedies like The Full Monty. So this is a very interesting genre group. Like so many disparate looking films actually are obeying the same rules. And the point being here that, as I've stated before, genre groups are about the conventions that are shared, that underpin our awareness of narrative, and then we look for the original on top of it. In communal drama, it cuts itself off from the domestic and the epic in several distinctive ways. The most obvious is that the protagonist is against the community they're part of. Now, the protagonist can be a group, as they are in The Full Monty, or an individual, as in Gran Torino. However, the second point here is that the second main story of the narrative is also about this conflict, normally represented by another character, but absolutely central to focusing the audience's attention on the fact that we're dealing with community values here, and how those values are actually seen by the protagonists. It's an act of standing out, standing up, being counted. And in this sense, some legal dramas also work because they're actually talking about the community not as the community where one lives, but an institution. So for instance, one could deal with conflict inside the army, or conflict within the legal system, or even conflict within a school or college. And in this way, you can see that personal dramas at this level become very communal. They are very much about the society in which the protagonist finds themselves, and in particular the community that they have to live with, or work against in some cases. In this world, we're looking for a few other things as well, besides the protagonist standing up against the crowd and the secondary story reflecting that. We're also looking for the fact that the main plot is driven by the central character's desire to avoid this conflict or resolve it one way or the other. Either works. The fourth element is that the secondary characters accept the wider community view. It's really important in this context that the protagonists appear isolated, everyone else basically playing the game, going along with a communal view of things, accepting that society is just the way it is. And the point of this narrative is to show that somebody, perhaps a group of people, are actually trying to do something different. Then we come on to the setting itself and the definition of what a community is. Unlike the domestic dramas, which work very much at a small group level, often the family or in work context, the communal drama is actually talking about a much wider society and setting. Not the big society that we find in epic dramas where one society is waging war against another, or we're dealing with major societal value conflict systems. But we're talking about a distinctive community, normally a neighbourhood or a particular set of buildings where an institution functions. It's limited, but it's beyond the handful of people of the domestic situation, and yet it's not on the epic scale of tens of millions of people potentially changing their lives as a result of the drama that's unfolding. So in this context, we're always looking for the definition of the community first. If we, the audience, do not understand the community and its values, we're very unlikely to actually recognise the degree to which the individual is standing up and the value of what they're doing and the difficulty of it actually is. We also need to look at what the theme is. In the recent past, these narratives have tended to focus on the desire for validation, as one can see in things like Slumdog Millionaire, The Full Monty and Bend It Like Beckham. However, the idea of order versus chaos and the idea of actually sort of putting things right still applies when it comes to many war narratives and people surviving the chaos of war in a communal setting. So in this context, things like the Hurt Locker and the question of, surviving societal breakdown, as in Children of Men, also works very, very well. Now, in this context, you can see that there are a tremendous variety of narratives that work within this genre group. But this is the whole point. The conventions work and allow narrative to be written creatively to deal with different values and different groups of people, and that's why people want to watch them. If we look at a couple of examples, you can actually see very quickly how this is played out. In Gran Torino, Walt, the retired veteran army person, is at odds with the society that's now grown up around him of immigrants. However, by the end of the film, he sacrifices his life in order to ensure that one of those immigrants is actually given a better future. It's a steady transition from denial and prejudice through to actually self-sacrifice. And the quality of the narrative is that you believe it. You understand that immigrant community, you understand their values, and you also understand Walt's and why he's at odds with his own family and why he finds something of value in the young teenager he defends. On a completely different scale, Slumdog Millionaire, a million miles from Walt and his world, we find Jamal actually being pursued because people think he can't actually possibly know the answers to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And more than that, he has no value, no right to know the answers. And we see his history in a series of flashbacks, not only how he gets the answers, but how he's in conflict with the society he's in, how he doesn't fit in, how he's of an underclass, how he has no rights, how he's exploited and betrayed, to the extent that he even loses the girl that he loves until the end of the film. This is a violent world in where things go wrong regularly. The chaos of his life is often there for all to see. But the challenge is to make this interesting, and it still follows the communal drama rules to ensure that happens. He's clearly in conflict with most of the people around him in every single sequence of his life, and ultimately, of course, he's in conflict with the people who are running the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. But in the end, he triumphs. In the same way that the group of unemployed middle-aged men in Sheffield ultimately triumphed in the Full Monty and discovered value for themselves in their own new actions. This is the point about communal drama. It looks at our society, it looks at the values of a particular part of it, and asks us to actually understand what the conflict is there and to value a vision of it that's different. Often these films challenge current conceptions, but they equally reinforce very important values about the individual, about the value of the community, and also the notion of justice on occasion. But most importantly, they show that one can construct order out of chaos, and more importantly, in the modern era, they show how one can obtain value by the actions you undertake, even if they put you in conflict with everyone around you. This is perhaps most beautifully illustrated in the last Toy Story, Toy Story 3, where Woody stands out against all the others in saying that there is a future after Andy and that something will work out when everyone else believes it won't. They, of course, set off for the new horizon of the daycare centre thinking all is going to be rosy until it turns out it isn't. And it's Woody who ultimately finds them and rescues them and takes them to somewhere where life can be better for them. His standing out against the crowd in this film is equal to Walt in Gran Torino, the Full Monty guys in Sheffield, and so on. The point being is here, it's the construction that comes from genre. The communal drama allows us to look at society and say some things are right, some things are wrong, and these individuals are going to choose the right thing. It may cost them their lives, but it may all work out okay in the end. That depends very much on the writer of the narrative. However, the fact that this conflict exists in society and these values have to be questioned will always be with us. And it's why these particular narratives will always be with us, and why communal drama is such an important genre in contemporary cinema.